Okay, and we are live. And joining me today is Dominique De Cooman. I hope I've said your name correctly, Dominique. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Kaya. Thank you.
We were just discussing before we went live that you were watching one of our other videos. I think it was one of the Fireside by DXP Report videos where we were discussing the release of Drupal 10, and I had maybe a little dig at Drupal, not a dig, but just highlight some of the issues that could that Drupal users are facing. And I asked, or I said that I would love to have a Drupal. I don't think I said fanboy, but I could have said fanboy. And you just said to me that I found the Drupal fanboys come on and defend Drupal.
Yeah,
So I'm happy that you're here to come and defend Drupal.
yeah, exactly. I was thinking that when you said that, yeah, I want to have some. I think you said like we want to have some people who can defend
That's
Drupal.
right.
I interpreted that like he's looking for a Drupal fanboy. So
Yep.
I
There
was
you go.
thinking that yes, I would be happy to come onto the podcast and defend Drupal. Um,
Yeah, for sure. Well, we're happy to have
yeah,
you. So why don't you tell me? Let's start off with just talking about Dropsolid. What is Dropsolid? It was an agency. Now you've released a product. Tell me a bit about the story.
yeah. So Dropsolid this year it's 10 years. Dropsolid. And Dropsolid is a digital experience company. It goes to the market both as a services part, which you can find under dropsolid.com, which is digital experience agency, which has all the services to build a great digital experience for enterprise companies. We work for companies mostly ranging about 50 million turnover up all the way to like 500 million turnover, like really mid-size, small to mid-size, even large enterprises. And then the DXP, we launched DXP in 2018, the Dropsolid Open Digital Experience Cloud. And it brings the Drupal CMS, Mautic marketing automation, and then CDP based on the Apache Unomi CDP engine. And it also has a Drupal cloud platform, which helps you to build and release many Drupal sites.
Okay, excellent. So why did you feel the need in 2018 to launch this product? Did you see a gap in the market? Did you see something that Drupal users were struggling with back then that maybe the likes of Acquia weren't helping them with?
So yeah, well, I think you touching Acquia. Acquia is actually one of our examples in the market. They deliver a great product to the larger enterprise market. So they host like really big websites like the Olympics and companies like Pfizer and Bayer. But we felt the smaller and mid-sized enterprises also needed a great enterprise DXP, and
Hmm.
Acquia is also delivering a lot of proprietary technology on top of the open
Yes.
source. We branded ourselves as being the most open DXP in the market, because we see our customers, they really want the open source. They just want a great platform to run Drupal and Mautic with enterprise level support and great tooling. So that's why we felt there was a need in the market. Also here in the European market, we also felt, but this is more a niche need, where we see the privacy issues, like data ownership, data sovereignty. We now see it in the US also a little bit, but more about other businesses not knowing about the data of the company, like keeping the data private,
Hmm.
for protecting the business secrets, if you want. So, but here in Europe, it's mostly keeping the data ownership with the company, with the organization, because of privacy reasons.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I've got, like, out of curiosity, I'm interested. I imagine most of your, or the vast majority of your customers were already on Drupal, and then they discovered Dropsolid. But do you also have another stream of business from other CMSs that sort of discover you and want that experience, maybe an open source experience where they were on a proprietary platform before? Is that something you see often, or is it mainly just Drupal users?
So yes, so we have both streams. So Dropsolid focuses on Drupal. Like here in Europe, we're one of the Drupal experts, especially also on the services, having attracted a lot of talent around Drupal here in the European market. So yeah, companies find us because we have made a name for ourselves around Drupal. But we also see other companies moving away from proprietary tech because of the lock-in. Most of the time, it's this to be able to move faster and innovate faster and take control of the content, the code, and the data. Be the full owner of it.
Makes sense. Makes sense for sure. I'm reading some of your copy on your website, and you say we are a DXP with low barrier of entry because there's out of the box integrated hybrid and headless CMSs. Which headless CMSs do you integrate with, and which ones do you most commonly see being used alongside Dropsolid?
So your question being integrating with other hybrid CMSs?
Correct.
So, yeah, what I mean with that on the website is that the Dropsolid Drupal-based CMS is a hybrid CMS. So it's actually Drupal being deployed as a headless CMS itself. So like, as you know, I think this is I think a bit of the confusion that is in the market because Drupal exists for I think more than 20 years now. So it's been going through a lot of trends. And last 4 or 5 years, you see all these pure headless CMSs come onto the market. But actually, from I think 2011, when the Drupal community was working on the Drupal 8 release, where the complete framework was reworked and was rethought, being API first. So actually, Drupal is also already 10 years working on becoming API first and working towards being a truly headless CMS, but it's a hybrid CMS because you can just use it and it's normal like the old school CMS where the HTML and the CSS just comes out of the box, but it's also fully API first, so you can build on top of this a headless CMS. So that's why they call it hybrid. Right now, there are headless starter kits for Drupal. Like for Next.js, we have the next-drupal.org, which is a contribution by a company called Chapter 3, which contributes like a headless starter kit for Drupal with Next.js. So like right now, you can move pretty fast with Drupal, building it headless as well, but you are not forced to build it fully headless, so you can still leverage all the site building and build like parts of your site that don't have necessarily the need of being purely headless. You can just still build them normally and use the great caching systems Drupal has and have a great performance and everything. But if you want to have other parts of your site to go multi-channel, to build more interactive parts of your site, you can do this, and obviously you can build a fully headless site as well. We did a couple of projects like this last year, so you will see Drupal definitely seeing more and more projects released where Drupal is being released in a headless mode.
Yeah, I guess Drupal 10 was a good example of them taking a big step in that direction for sure. You mentioned again on your website integrations, right? With Dropsolid, are the integrations, I say limited, but obviously Drupal has a huge selection of modules. Are the integrations limited by what Drupal has as modules, or are you guys also building sort of custom integrations that go beyond modules? And also, as a follow-up question to that, how are you mitigating some of the issues that come with those modules, which is like, compatibility and, just things breaking because there's so many modules sort of working together?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you can easily build a Frankenstein Drupal site monster with 300 modules and combining everything. So that's why need, if you are working with Drupal, I think one of the biggest success factors is that you select a company that really knows Drupal and knows how to build large websites, enterprise grade websites with it, and not just select an agency that just does Drupal. On the integration side, yes, there is a huge module ecosystem in Drupal that allows you to build with everything, and that's what Dropsolid also uses. We don't build specifically other proprietary plugins for this. If we would do that, we would just contribute this back to the Drupal space. We do the same thing to the Matic space. Like today, even we are integrating Matic with a recruitment system, like a recruitment software system where we build a module. We will just contribute that back to the Matic community, and most of the time it's just a customer that pays for that, for the integration, or the vendor who is sponsoring this. Like a lot of vendors just sponsor the Drupal development module, so their platform is capable of integrating with Drupal having 3% of the internet power, mostly large websites. So for them, for most enterprise software, it makes sense to sponsor the Drupal module development. And then companies like Dropsolid, the experience agency, part of Dropsolid, will take that module, evolve it. If there's new stuff, we will contribute it back to the community, but we will not sell this as a proprietary layer.
Sure.
So both Drupal, Matic, the integration ecosystem is growing. I think that's good, and yeah, you just need to, I think, have good developers on it. If you do enterprise development, I think that's the takeaway there. The integration is everything.
Yeah, for sure. I was talking to somebody earlier who was also struggling with like a sort of not Frankenstein, because that would be unfair on the person who built it, but it was definitely a heavily plug-in reliant WordPress instance that was facing similar issues to what we're talking about. You can build a Frankenstein thing where if you don't know, if you're using an agency or a company who has been building those websites of that size for a long period of time, you can make this sort of mistake of just, bringing together lots of plugins and themes, and, you make an update and suddenly things are falling apart. So I think when it comes to Drupals and WordPresses of the world, there's an extremely good use case for, working with an agency. When you just sort of spend a year or two trying to do it yourself, you very quickly learn that, okay, I made a lot of mistakes that another agency probably wouldn't have made, just because of the size of the ecosystem. As you're saying, the ecosystem of Drupal and Mautic is huge when you think about all the modules and integrations they have. You need to sort of tread lightly. At the beginning, it sort of looks enticing. It was like, wow, I can do so much and integrate so many things and build so many interesting experiences with all this. But you do have to tread lightly and just be cautious as you do it, because it can become like a Frankenstein that, if one domino falls, then you could have an issue on your hands. This kind of brings us to my last question, which is we're coming up to, again, sort of a lot of Drupal users are coming up to sort of migration time, right? Drupal 10 has come out. Drupal 7 is going to sleep soon, support wise. So when you guys have these customers and clients who are in that mode, what's your sort of advice to them? How do you make that process as simple as possible? And what do you say to the naysayers who, sometimes can include me, who say that, it's not really, is this sort of migration life cycle every X amount of years? Is it a sustainable thing for businesses? What's your response to all of that?
Well, I think with Drupal, the migration between major versions used to be like a big pain, like going from 6 to 7 or from 7 to 8, because the framework changed. Up from 8 to 9 and now to 10 is like actually a very smooth upgrade path. So the only thing that happens is the same thing as if you were moving from 9.5 to 9.6, and then from 9.6 to 10 is like the same jump, but just the deprecated code is cut out of it from the 9.6 to the Drupal 10. Yes. So this is not like when we went from 7 to 8, you really had breaking changes.
Yeah.
So you just had to rebuild the entire website, like from 8 to 9, from 9 to 10. You don't have to do that anymore. So actually, we have a webinar on this on our website on how to calculate your migration costs, because Dropsolid is also part of the long-term support Drupal 7. So if Drupal 7 goes to sleep, you can still have long-term support at Dropsolid.
Okay.
So there's
Interesting.
4 companies or 5 companies in the world that are doing that. We're the one in Europe. So because for some platforms they have invested, Drupal 7 is live since 2011, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe even 2010. I'm not sure. So you have companies invested like millions in Drupal 7 platforms.
For sure.
Yeah. So maybe for some it doesn't make sense to migrate and to just have the same functionality. For some it just makes sense to go into a long-term support, and then we will support it just until there is no Drupal 7 customers left anymore, basically. So the community stops Drupal 7, and possibly they can prolong it every year like they did it last year. So I expect maybe it will even prolong even another year if the install base is still pretty big. But if it doesn't, there are companies like Dropsolid who can give you long-term support. And then it's just like a financial calculation. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
If the cost of a long-term support, when you don't actually need a lot of new features, doesn't compare to a complete rebuild, then the long-term support makes more sense. If you say, okay, no, we definitely have to do a rebuild, we have new integrations, we want to rethink our complete digital experience, our content model, everything. We want to throw away our custom code. We're going to rebuild it. Anyway, then it's good to move. And then there are migration plans, both on the code and on the content and in the integrations, infrastructure migration, all these things. So if you have a specialized company who can do this, like we also do that, you can have it done, like in any technology.
Okay. Interesting. I didn't know actually that there was other companies that would support that, like Drupal, the Drupal approved companies that would support it beyond the end of its life. The support. That's interesting. Drupal 7 was released early 2011, so
11.
It's a long time for a company to be using that and investing into that infrastructure to leave it, for sure. One thing I would mention on this whole
value.
Oh yeah,
imagine
for sure.
The value.
Yeah.
If you now had a platform and it has lived for 12 years, and you write that off, like the initial cost divided by 12 years, not bad.
Yeah. Of course. There's no denying that. So my last question to you, I think I said last question twice now. My last question would be, you mentioned that the sort of the transition from 9 to 10, or from 8 to 10, 8 to 10, 9 to 10 will not be as difficult, right? Because the framework hasn't changed. I've been reading things on Reddit and elsewhere of people using Drupal who are saying that's true, but there's certain modules that are not yet supported on Drupal 10. So my question to you is, are you advising, do you have, I imagine you've got a range of customers who are sort of exploring this. Are you advising some of them to move now and some of them to wait until certain modules are sort of being supported? Is that
Yes.
So I guess my question is today the right time for every company to migrate, or should they check what modules they're using and decide from there?
When is it ready to go? So actually when we moved from 7 to 8, and then obviously all these contrib modules, they also needed to be rebuilt with a new framework. From 8 to 9, there was still there was still a lot of time that went over the modules, which was significantly shorter when we went to 7 to 8. Now from 9 to 10, that's even more shorter. And because of the changes in the API have been programmatically being deployed over most modules. So most modules were actually upgraded automatically by a system that was provided by the Drupal community. So almost, I have to look in Dries's presentation about this, but a huge percentage is already moved, and like the most important modules are already on Drupal 10. Like we are already building on Drupal 10 right now. So we are
Yeah.
not waiting another release. We just already building the new projects on Drupal 10. So
Okay.
yes, if you
That's
know it, yeah, definitely go with it. Especially knowing that the huge majority and the most important modules are already there. So yeah, it makes sense to do it. If you're not knowing what you're doing, maybe you can wait. But if you know, then I think it's no
yeah.
problem.
I think that's fair advice. I wanted a Drupal fanboy. I definitely got one. I wanted someone who defended Drupal, and you did a fantastic job of defending them. And you made a good case for why, as you said, 3% of the internet uses Drupal, right? So I think there is a good place to leave it. Dropsolid .io is where you can go to see the Dropsolid DXP. It's worth checking out, even if you're not using Drupal. I think it's really, really interesting just as a project. Yeah, Dominique, it's been a pleasure. I think we should do this again. Maybe in a year's time, just to pick up where you guys are and what's new with Drupal. I think it'll be a good sort of our Drupal network, our Drupal connection for the podcast.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kaya.
No problem. Thank you, and speak soon.
All right. Bye bye.